What's going on, everybody? It's Professor Gnome, and I'm joined today with Control Players Unite. And I thought it'd be really fun. We're going to be starting a new series. It's called Banter Battles as of right now until I think of a better title. So if you think of a better one, feel free to list it in the comments down below. But what this series is that I thought it'd be fun to work with other creators and stuff like that, do kind of a little bit of an interview style series as we just do some games back and forth. So, hope you guys enjoy the ride, and here's Control Players Unite to give his side of it. Welcome.
Thank you, Professor Gnome. It's great to be here with everybody. Hello to the Pokemon trainers and to Control Nation. We love you. Keep it real. And we're just going to have a little conversation while we do these battles for you. So just sit back and relax, get your favorite cup of joe, and listen to us banter.
Alright, so we're probably just going to do like a best of 3 random games. I'm curious to see, we don't know what each other are playing going into this, so I'm very curious to see what we both kind of end up on. But I won the coin flip, so I'm going to be going first. Alright, not a terrible hand. But yeah, so to get into this, I thought it'd be fun to kind of do like a little bit of an interview-esque side series. And part of the things that made me want you as the first guest is I've seen your channel for a little while. I actually started watching it all the way back when I covered one of the decks that you did, the Slow King build, that I thought was really, really interesting at the time. And one of the things that I thought about like wanting to get to know more of when it comes to like your content is that you focus very heavily on like control style decks and builds, which is what I would dub to be like rather abnormal within this space. And so I'd be curious to see like what got you into like that play style and what makes control decks like your main focus.
Yeah, thanks for your question, Professor Gnome. That's a really good question to start off with. Let me just give maybe a little bit of background as to how I got into the game. I
Yeah,
played it
absolutely.
about 10 years ago. Yeah, I played it about 10 years ago. Um, but then I really just grad school started up really heavily, and I just found myself like I couldn't really focus on it full time the way I wanted to, so I had to put it to the side. And then, as I said, like maybe 9, 10 years later, um, what happened was I had an assignment where I had to do a self case study wherein I would perform a leisurely activity so many times a week for so many hours, and I would grade my material level of happiness both before and after. And lo and behold, Zapdos TCG popped up on my YouTube news feed, like my YouTube feed, and I was like, "Oh yeah, Pokemon cards, I remember those." So I downloaded the online client, saw my old cards, I started watching his videos, and got caught up on the then meta, which was like when Leafeon V just came out. That's a long time ago at this point. It's like 3 years now or something. And so I just started playing a lot. And as I got used to the meta and like feeling it out, I realized I was really, really drawn to control style play. Um, Not entirely sure why. I guess it just jives with my personality. But one of the things I can say, Professor Gnome, is that um, I feel that control gets a bad rap because people think it's just stall tactics and wasting your opponent's time. I realized that I had something to say about control style play watching all of the really big channels like you mentioned. I'm sorry, I think you mentioned it elsewhere, but like Zapdos CCG, like LDF, Azul GG, um, those types of, and I realized, whether it was in the comment section or um, they themselves, like Control always got kind of made fun of. And I'm like, wait a minute, it's a legit style of play. The Pokemon Company prints these cards. Like, they obviously want us to use them. Now we know, like, with reversal energy and things like that, comeback mechanics are definitely real. And I found myself having these conversations in my own head, like, yeah, like, I have something to say about Control and Pokemon cards in general as my Toedscroll gets KO'd. Um, but, like, I wasn't really sure how to go about it, but there was something churning inside of me. And it wasn't that I was ever like anti-aggro or anything like that. It just really didn't. It was just the kind of thing that didn't appeal to me for how I like to play the game. And then it occurred to me one day, Professor Gnome, wait a minute. We're not just stalling when we play control. We're doing a lot of other different types of things too. For instance, we are energy discarding. we are like with this Scream attack on Screamtail, we're stopping certain types of cards from being played.
Yeah,
And
which was
so I
really
went
frustrating, by the
through.
way. Really messed me up, actually. So very good play. I wanted to point it out, but I didn't want to
Oh,
interrupt you.
oh, that's very kind of you to say. Thank you so much. Um, yeah, it was just that I realized, like, my background is academia, and I just did my scholarly thing where I went through every single Pokemon card in the standard meta, back then and up to this day. And I'm like, wait a minute, we have 16 different ways to control here. Control is much bigger than what players think it is. Control is not just stalling, it's a whole host of different things. And that's when, like, I don't know, for those of you that would look at the channel, different videos I've done, it's not just control and aggressive and mill, it's aggro control, it's aggro mill, it's control mill. There are different ways you can combine different archetypes. And you don't have to adopt my vocabulary to see how these cards really work together. A good example of this is Iron Thorns. Um, Iron Thorns works in such a way that. Oh, wait a minute. Let me just do that. Let me see if I can. Can I do this? Yes, I can. I'm not sure what I want to do here. Let's just get like this. Iron Thorns works in such a way that you're attacking for prizes, and you're also trying to disrupt your opponent with its initialization ability. And I found that, just for me personally, when I would play cards just for fun, this is how I really liked playing it. And that's when the juices started churning, and I'm like, wait a minute, I could take my enjoyment of the control style genre and make it into a channel, because control style play, as we know, doesn't really get all that much attention. It's basically Pidgeot and whatever All Out Blitzel's doing, and then all the different Snorlax players. But other than that, we're kind of just like out in the ether, even though control was being emphasized by TPCI itself. So that's a very long-winded answer to your question, Professor No, but I think it was warranted given how complex I think control play can be at times.
Oh, that works even on the bench. I'm dumb. Anyway.
No worries.
Sorry. I don't know why I thought it didn't work there. But anyway, yeah, no, so that's one of the things that you bring up a really good point, and it kind of brings me to my next question on a lot of times we see stall play or control play in general get a lot of hate from people. And one of the things that I always often argue is that control is ironically needed for a metagame to function correctly, because what ends up happening a lot of times is that if you have no control style decks at all in any format, then what they run into is the problem that as soon as really hyper aggro decks just become everywhere, then the game kind of just turns into this like rampant race of just like whoever can win turn one. It's kind of a weird thing that like Yu-Gi-Oh, to relate to other games that I've played, Yu-Gi-Oh right now has a really bad issue where the game is so accelerated and everything is based around just how fast you can build a board and just destroy your opponent before they can do anything. And it puts you in this situation where, because there's no real like cards to build a board to stop anything, to do anything, it's just about whoever got the better opening hand like instantaneously just like wins the game. And I feel like if you don't have like resources to control or manipulate a game, you're just kind of in this really awkward state where you can't get much done, if that makes sense. Like it allows it allows a metagame to get like really out of control if you don't have people, for lack of better phrasing, preparing for control style decks.
Absolutely, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. I think we run into a similar situation in the Pokemon trading card game with those really hyper fast aggro decks. I mean, people are upset about and listen, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not picking on anybody. I'm just making an observation. There's a lot of hate for control style play, and yet the same types of objections can be applied to aggro just as well. For example, Charizard EX or Dragapult, with or without Pidgeot, they can set up turn 2 super fast, taking KOs right away before you even get a board state set up. So it's not like control has a monopoly on making players unhappy. I've been on the bad end of a block Snorlax match many a time. It's frustrating for those of us who enjoy control as much as those who don't. It's just that what it goes back to something you said about how with you need control to have a metagame, and it really is true. I mean, control in some ways makes aggro because we understand what aggro is. Maybe that's a bit of an overstatement, but I think you understand what I'm saying. It's just they kind of they bounce off of each other. I remember some months ago I did a poll on my channel where I talked a bit about how like I asked the players like what do you think like what's the value of control, and they basically said that it helps keep the genre it helps keep the game healthy.
Yeah, and
So
so kind of
nothing.
oh, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I
So
was done. Go ahead.
to kind of pivot off that, and like that's kind of the point that I wanted to make, and I don't think I was kind of explaining it as well as I could have. But one of the things that kind of makes your point, and using Charizard is a great example of this, is that one of the things that you'll run into a lot of times is that when it comes to making a metagame more diverse and important is, let's take Charizard EX for example, right? The biggest weaknesses of Charizard EX for a very long time was that its weakness into stall decks specifically, because it took away from their list building, right? They weren't running Toro, they weren't playing multiple switches, because the deck itself doesn't need it until Snorlax comes into the meta, right? That forces certain cards out of its list that it now has to replace them to run multiple switches. It had to run Minior for a while. It had to run things like the, what's it called? Like Toros, like I said before. And so because it's now losing cards from its deck list that it needs to tech in order to, like, be able to sustain and fight through a regular matchup, it allows other control decks the opportunity, or not control decks, but it allows other not tier 1 decks to fight back and have like an actual chance against Charizard, because now its entire list isn't there to just solely crush you. And
Absolutely, exactly. I agree 100%. Yeah. And there's the match. Well, that's that.
oh, this is something my Discord has been working on for a little bit. The Garchomp with the Boomerang energy and the Sparkling Crystal. It's actually so insane.
Yeah. Wow, that was really intense. I was like, oh gosh, how am I gonna do this? I need Devo. Nope, Devo's prized.
Oh, that's rough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No worries.
Here, let me pick a random other deck and we'll get into game 2. But yeah, and so like that's the thing, like that's another thing that I kind of wanted to talk to you about, which is like the general health that you think is required, or like where you kind of think that the environment of the game kind of falls into play when it comes to control style decks, like how relevant they are and how needed they are to like actually maintain the health of an actual metagame, and not just the meta itself, but like just the game in general. Like, I feel like without them, the game kind of becomes very sedentary. I think that's one of the things too, like control, and I've said this before, like when I've covered Snorlax control and stuff like that. It's like, look, don't get me wrong, it's not the playstyle for everybody. Snorlax is my favorite Pokemon in all of the entire franchise, and I'm not the biggest like Snorlax control fan, but I still understand that like there are people that really need or want that kind of gameplay like available, because also it just requires something different. Like the way you have to think out your moves and like the way you have to plan things, like it becomes like much more analytical than I think people give it credit for.
You're absolutely right, Professor Gnome. 110% there. Control here. Let me try to make an analogy. I remember some years ago I was watching a nature show on Yellowstone National Park in the state of Wyoming, and like the plant life, the vegetation had just completely depleted. They're like, what's going on? Is there a virus? What's happening? Apparently, it was the deer or the caribou that were eating everything because their population was out of control. And the park rangers decided to reintroduce wolves to the park. People get freaky. Oh crap! You're bringing wolves in. What are you doing with wolves? Like, oh, we don't need these, bloodthirsty creatures or whatever. And apparently, wolves are actually afraid of people, according to the experts. But that's not the point. The point is, let me get my cards out here. There we go. The point is that the wolves started to eat the deer or caribou and kept the whole species in check. And so, not that control players are wolves, we're not these vicious players. It's just that a lot of times I find that control helps keep the meta healthy by giving it that little extra caution that it needs to have so things don't get out of control. So the wolves keep the deer in control, and control players keep the meta in control. No pun intended, but you see what's going on here. It's this kind of like give and take kind of healthy relationship. I think it's a healthy relationship. It forces you to think outside the box, as you said. It forces you to reevaluate things. Yeah, okay, so not everyone's playing block lax and Pidgeot control, but you have a fair chance of hitting it in a tournament, IRL or online. So you have to think, okay, wait, do I need an extra switch? And there are times where you could say to yourself, oh, I didn't think I needed that. Oh, apparently I did. Kind of second guess yourself, but it's like a healthy second guessing, if I could say it like that. It really, oh crap, what am I doing here? It really does add that little extra element of maybe I need to reconsider XYZ, and then maybe my deck will be where it needs to be. I think control style play requires players to think outside the box in such a way that it really can rearrange your insides a bit in a healthy way. Well, think of it like this. And I have nothing against aggro. I play aggro decks for fun when I'm not streaming. It's just that, if all you're doing is Miraidon, Dragapult, Charizard, etc., it's like you kind of get monotonous with it. It's the same old run. Let me energize my Pokemon, put it on the board, and attack, which there's nothing wrong with whatsoever. It's just if you mix it up and do something different, you get. I don't want to say like it's life altering, getting a different part of your brain working, but we know this just from like ordinary habits. Like when you break out of like run-of-the-mill kinds of things that you do every day, like you can really start to see changes in your day-to-day life. That's just one example, of course. But I think something similar can happen if players who are listening to this just give control a chance. And it doesn't have to be Pidgeot, and it doesn't have to be Block-Lax. It could be Ursaluna control, like what I'm doing now with Pete Hunt. Get any 2 cards I want from my discard. What am I going to get? I'm going to get this and this. So yeah, I think it's a bit long-winded. I don't want to be running in circles, but I think what you said is 100% true. Control, if anything, keeps the meta healthy. I think the counter-argument minimally is that there might be such a thing as it's too healthy. There might be a situation where it's like, there's too much control. There's too much of this other stuff going on. Maybe we need to bring it back a bit. But that's another that's another kind of argument. So I think that's pretty much what I have to say about that.
Yeah,
that makes any sense.
I definitely can agree. There's times, and we can see this in not just the Pokemon TCG, but in a lot of other ones as well, that like if the game gets out of control, like no pun intended, we're going to be using that word a lot during these conversations.
Yeah.
But like if anything gets too strong, it kind of breaks that ecosystem, to continue to use the analogy. And actually using the Yellowstone wolves is actually a perfect analogy, by the way. For anyone who's listening, definitely look into that. It's a really, really cool, fascinating kind of study. If you're interested in that, by the way, I literally just did a project based on that for a class I did recently. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. They did it with there's another thing called Rewilding Britain, or Rewilding the UK, where they did a thing with like beavers. There's a whole bunch of stuff. So if you're interested in that, like ecological stuff, completely side note from the TCG, but like look into it. It's really cool. Sorry. But aside from any of that, one of the things that I did want to pivot on, because this is something that you had mentioned, but if there was, let's say that somebody's watching this, right, and they're like, you know what, I've never really thought of control that way. I definitely want to, start looking into it. What would you be like the 3 control decks that you would like recommend to somebody who's like just wanting to start and like just wanting to get into it?
Okay, so if you're talking about having something that's very easy to pilot, the answer is block Snorlax.
Mm-hmm.
Because basically you get Lax in the active, put Rotom here on the bench, and then just basically just keep controlling with whatever cards you get into your hand. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a really deep deck. It has ways out of pretty much every matchup. But like it has its moments. You know, it's just very easy to do. Offhand, like don't play Pidgeot control. It basically induces analysis paralysis. It gives you too many options. It's too difficult for a lot of players when they first start out. So I would recommend staying away from Pidgeot till you get more experience under your feet, till you understand all of the archetypes and how they work and why they work the way they do. What I'm playing right now, Ursaluna control, I would wait until you know how to get like the loops going. If you're not good, I mean, not all the loops are hard, like the Penny loop or the Sharon's Care loop I'm doing now, but you know, if you're just starting out and you're, oh, what are loops? Oh gosh, oh gosh, oh gosh. No, just it's okay. Just wait. It's gonna be fine. So Blocklax would be the first one for ease of piloting. The second deck I'd recommend is Iron Thorns, which is in the aggro control genre because you are attacking to take KOs. But you're also able to use Crushing Hammer. You can use what am I doing with this? You're able to use Canceling Cologne to get rid of Mimikyus and Ogre Pawns, that type of stuff. So, I'm sorry, I'm trying to do two things at once here. Let me just look at this real quick. So, Iron Thorns EX, because it's just Iron Thorns. Like, pretty much, you could put Mimikyu and Ogre Pawn in if you want, but it's not necessary. It doesn't really matter. So, yeah. Just straight up Iron Thorns, attach the energy, know that you have to pivot out. You can get a free retreat with your capsule. So, I mean, it is what it is. So those are the two. So those are the first two. It might consider. While I'm talking about recommendations, I might recommend brand new players to control stay away from item control decks like Floatzel or Poltegeist, just because you have to know how to gust around certain types of cards, how to really play like the intricacies of each deck, each archetype. So we got Blocklax, we have Iron Thorns. I'm trying to think offhand. Like in the meta, it's really just those two. Maybe Ursa every now and then. I don't want to cop out Professor Gnome and take a rain check. Let me just maybe think about that for a sec for number 3.
No, yeah, if you come up with one. One that it's not meta by any means, but it was one of my favorite control decks for a very long time was I don't know if you remember, but right when the Relicanth came out, everybody was doing Relicanth with Magnezone.
Magnezone, yeah.
Yeah, that one was a lot of fun. That was a control deck that I really liked. I feel like it was similar in the sense to this Ursaluna, where it was more about just reusing your discard or like your discard pile than like actually like getting attacks off or anything like that. Where like you were able to loop Crushing Hammers, you were able to loop like whatever you really needed, and that deck was a ton of fun. This the other one that I love. It's not necessarily a control deck in the sense. It's obviously more of like a mill, but I cop out and kind of like combine those a little bit for myself. But playing Wugtrio is always fun. I can't get enough Wugtrio.
Wugtrio is great fun whenever it flips heads for you. Yeah, I've been milled out several times on the ladder by Wugtrio decks. And Reversal Energy only serves to help its cause.
Yeah, speaking of heads, I think I flipped heads on this poison every time.
Yeah.
That's so crazy. That never happens.
Legit.
We're just kind of stuck here.
Yeah, so ladies and gentlemen who are watching who are new to Control, this is what Control does. It starts a loop. Your opponent probably can't get out of it or break it. But I mean, that's not, not why we're here per se, but I mean, you see how it works. Yeah, so where was I going with this? Let me put this down. A Wugtrio is definitely fun. Mill decks are fun in general. Great Tusk can be frustrating though because you self-mill.
Yeah, I
anyway.
feel like Great Tusk is the hardest of those ones to use, just because of the fact that you're not just managing your own. Like you're not just managing trying to mill your opponent. You also have to manage like your own, like how many cards you're drawing, because everything's just plussing you up cards from your own deck, and like making sure that you recycle everything can be kind of a pain.
Mm.
But yeah, that's definitely a thing. One of the other things too, that I would be curious to know when it comes to the control style of things is that I think, what do you think really separates? Because I think with aggro players, it's like kind of more well known in the sense of like what separates like a good and a bad, or like a mediocre to like a middle tier player, if that makes sense. Where it's like, what do you think the skills are that really separate like those gaps? Where it's like, okay, they're new. How do they get to kind of being a middle to like median control player, and like what makes the gap between like median to like actually like, I'll use the word like competent, like a very skilled control player.
So thank you for your question, Professor Gnome. Off the top of my head, and please, again, ladies and gentlemen, this is not an insult against aggro players. It's just an observation I've made. The base answer to your question is that control players typically have to know the meta better than anybody else. And it's not me trying to talk up control players. It's not me trying to make control players sound like they're better. We're all equal here. We're all players. We're all just trying to do our thing. But really... Oh, wait, let me just do this real quick.
No, I mean, that,
really,
that being said, that's something that I was actually to go off of, is like, I would argue that's definitely something that's true. Even from my own play of it, and I'm by no means a adamant control player, but like it goes back to like the list building and stuff like that. Like when you're playing control, you have to know like, okay, Charizard lists, for example, don't play switch, or now they play one switch. So once, like, I'm waiting till I see that, or like how many rare candies do the average deck play? I have to play around that and like go through these processes, or you're not going to be able to like actually succeed the way that you need to be able to.
Professor M, you took the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly it. And then, like, even then, like, your opponent might occasionally surprise you. Like, I played a Miraidon deck on the latter day with 4 switches. I mean, they're known for playing switches, but it didn't have a... They're also known for playing, what do you call it? A Prime Catcher, but they didn't have any Prime Catchers. They just had regular switches. I'm like, this is weird. Okay. Well, and I can only say it's weird because I know what I know what I'm supposed to expect. Like, what you said is exactly true. Like, I have to know lists more than the average player, and that's just like how it is. Look at somebody like Alessandro Cremascoli or Sander Wojciech. Like, how do these control players constantly get top 32, top 16 placements? How do they make it to Worlds? Like, it's not just that. I mean, it's everything we just said about mastering other archetypes. It's also that, wow, you keep flipping heads on this.
I know, it's insane. I think the game's bugged because I haven't flipped a single tails all game.
Oh, it's a good bug for once.
Yeah.
Did I say that? Yes, I did. Okay. Okay. No, it's like, gosh, where's my? There it is. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of this guy. Yeah. So it's not only just knowing the archetypes, like knowing, like, you kind of, it might sound like a stereotype, like for like playing to your outs, but like I find that when I play control, like I have to know my outs much more than I guess the average player. And again, I'm not trying to sound like I'm special or anything. Heaven knows I'm not the best control player on earth. It's just like, if your Cradily was attacking me right now, I'd be scrambling, like, oh crap, like I have to. Oh, I gotta get this. I gotta get this other thing in place. Oh, I gotta get this out of the way. Oh gosh, he's gonna Zerosic me. I lose all my hand. Like, control. As you can see, control decks like this, they get so like such big hands. Like, you have it's like okay, I gotta manage my hand more. I have all those resources, but I can only use so many, and it's like one thing after another. and it's just kind of like, all right, I'm constantly looking for an out. Like, okay, how can I get out of this thing? Well, of course, the answer is Sharon's Care. And what happens when Sharon's Care rotates? You know, it's just like it's another thing I have to deal with.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's just
Oh, go ahead.
you're no, go ahead. No, I was done.
Yeah, sorry about that. The gap time delay between Discord is a thing, but that's one of the things too, where it's like I talk about this a lot when it comes to like, oh, how do I improve? How do I get better, like as a player and stuff like that. And like one of the things that I talk about a lot of the times is the like knowing how to sequence correctly, right? Like that's a huge skill that is needed in order to play, like especially on average when people are saying, you know, how do I do this? Oh, there's my first tails.
Wow.
But good thing for me, I have a second Credilli that's going to flip heads. Right here. You're both sleeping out in the shed. But yeah, so it's like, you know, I talk about like knowing how to sequence and like being able to do that and go through everything is like so vitally important if you're going to be like, you know, if you're going to improve as a player and like get better. And I think that's the thing with control, where it's like sequencing is the skill that I tell like everyone who's playing like aggro or more like aggressive decks to like really learn. And I feel like for control players, it's like learning the meta is like that equivalence. Like you need to know what all the deck lists are. You need to know like what the win con of each deck is, where it's like you can rely, let's use your Miraidon example, where it's like against Charizard, like I've said, like you can rely on disrupting their switch cards and how many switches they actually have, but that's not going to work for a deck like Miraidon as well, because they're able to do it so frequently and so easily that it's just not going to translate the same way. And so you have to figure out like what the weakness of each deck is, not only in its archetype and the way that it functions, but also in the way that it list builds and what advantages or disadvantages you're going to have. Another example of this is like, for like, let's take like Lugia, right? It's like, well, we know that Lugia, like, if you're able to get rid of the Archeopses, you're in a great spot because the deck just can't function without them. But the question is, like, how do we actually do that efficiently? And is there a way to do it? And learning, like, where to go and, like, how to actually manipulate that is the most important thing. And figuring out, like, what energies you have to, like, actually have to play around. And all of that comes in, like, the control fashion, like, much more... It's much more important in that deck than, like, any other.
Decent point. Yeah, I mean, look, you're tacking on. Let me see here. 200 and was it gonna be 270?
Yeah, I'm gonna be right under the threshold, unfortunately.
Oh, so close.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so like in this example, like you're absolutely right. Like I'm thinking, in a way, with control, what you're saying to yourself is, how can I escape? How can I get out? Rather than like, how can I attack? Although there are certainly aggro control decks, like there are decks where you can attack and then like Iron Thorns, but it's kind of like a both and kind of a thing. Like, okay, what am I doing here? How am I getting out? What's going on with this? Maybe do I want you to KO me? Am I gonna let you? Yeah, blah blah blah. Like, how is this gonna work? Do I want to do this? No, I don't want to do that. I'm just gonna do this. Yeah. So control, the way I think of it, Professor Gnome, is control has an extra step or two. It's the same kind of mental motions that the regular aggro player goes through, with that little extra. Okay, I have to know these deck lists a little bit better. How am I going to get rid of these resources that my opponent's going to be used to beat me? Because they're not just going to beat me on prizes. I can actually wear them out. I think the term Magic the Gathering players use is outvaluing. I'm going to outvalue my opponent's resources. And then just kind of wear them down in general. I think one of the other, I don't know, maybe it's a fault, but one of the critiques of control is that it just takes a really long time to play.
Yeah,
and
I
like
imagine this video is going to be very long because of this game particularly.
Exactly. Look, I already have 12 some minutes and 40 seconds left. It's like, oh gosh, Dr. Red, just make a freaking move already. Well, I am moving, but it's like it's a slow move. I don't know what to say. So that's just, you know, it's just how it is at times. So, you know,
Yeah, it's the nature of the beast.
Exactly, it's the nature of the beast. You said it right. Okay, I am tired of looking at that. All right. Just do this. Okay, so yeah. Control definitely has a couple extra steps involved because you're trying to not just attack and win by taking cards. You're not usually, but it's like you're also trying to figure out how can I stay alive and control or play the game at the same time. So, again, I don't want aggro players to feel like they don't have the same burden, but it's definitely it's a different mindset, I would say.
Yeah.
You have to kind of switch gears a little bit.
Yeah, I would also argue too, like, and this game is a great example of it too. And this is something I actually talk about in the reverse, where we hear a lot of times people criticize and, you know, go against control and like, oh, it's boring, it's this, it's that. And it's like, if you're playing against it though, it also, like, one of the skills that I think people kind of miss out on is the patience element. Where it's like, in a game like this, it's like, if you're not patient, if you can't, like, keep your mental, you're gonna either lose much faster or miss out on, like, an actual opportunity to win the game.
Absolutely. I mean, and I flipped heads. Okay. Or, sorry, tails. Okay.
It's okay. I have to figure out, and so, like, all right, and so, like, this is the flip side of it, right? It's like, I'm going against control here, right? You're gonna be able to loop this, and so it's kind of up to me in this situation to figure out if it's possible for me to win, because you can loop Pidgeot pretty much indefinitely, so you're gonna be able to beat me if it just goes to, like, a deck out race.
Yep.
And so now it's up to me to figure out, like, all right, is it even possible for me to do enough damage to get through here? And the answer, unironically, could be yes, could be no. The only way I'm going to find out is a card that I need to find in my deck that I can't reveal just yet. And if I can get it, we'll see what happens. Because I may or may not reveal a minor secret here, and that's that my brute bonnets are all prized. And so I'm stuck on 2 status conditions rather than having the potential of getting to 3.
Exactly. This is something that, like, now that you've shared that, like, it's like control players like, oh crap, yeah, 3. Now how can Ursaluna beat Cradily? Like, this is just, it's just not fair. It's not a thing or whatever, you know, we want to call it. But I mean, it's something we just have to think about when you're going through. Like, how can I win by not taking prizes? How does this thing work? Yeah, that's you hit the nail on the head. Can you get enough damage in? Yeah. So yeah, the control player is definitely, like, sweating right now in different ways too. Oh, whoops, I didn't want to do that. So Professor Gnome, do you ever? I'm just curious. Do you ever engage in any control decks? Are you more the aggro kind of player?
So for me, I actually feel more often than not, like, I definitely engage in it. I do it, one, for the channel. If there's a deck that is, I find really either interesting or people want me to cover or whatever, whether it's control or not, I'll cover it. But outside of filming and outside of YouTube and anything like that, I definitely do. It's a style that I play a little bit less of, but it also just depends, I think, on the environment. So I talk about this a lot, that, like, certain decks just lend themselves to certain environments more. So, for example, if you're trying to climb the ladder and, like, you know, I want to get to Arceus as fast as possible, don't play control, because not that it won't help you and not that you won't be able to win, but the games typically take longer, and ranked is a best of 1 format. So it's better to just play like Raging Bolt, where your game is going to be decided on, like, turn 2. And you're just going to maximize as many games as you're just able to play through and go from there, right? But it's like, if that's your goal, like, just to get out as many games as humanly possible, get as many points on the ladder as possible, it's like, you may win 9 out of 10 of your control games, but they took you so much longer that it's, like, just worth it to just play a hyper aggro that you're just going to burn through very quickly. And even if you're only winning 6 of your 10 games rather than 9, like, you're going to end up kind of in the same place. But outside of that, like, if I'm just playing for fun, I'll definitely play control decks, but I typically won't play, like, Snorlax block. I'll end up playing things like we talked about before, like, well, I'll play, like, Magnezone or something in that kind of field. Like, right now, I'll probably cover it on the channel soon, but I'm working on a Gumshoes build that, like, focuses on, like, energy discarding and stuff like that, because I think that kind of playstyle is, like, a lot of fun, and just, like, messing around and, like, I love the coin flip of Crushing Hammer. Right now it's working in my favor, which is exciting. But it's like, I just think like that kind of stuff is so fun. It's an element of Pokemon that I think is really underrated, because obviously in every card game and anything that's competitive, you want as much consistency as you can possibly manage. So a lot of times cards like Crushing Hammer get kind of removed from the game, for lack of better terms. But one of the things that I love about it is that chance element. Like, it's very rare that you kind of run into that in a lot of other competitive spaces. And so, like, just being able to throw Crushing Hammers, flipping coins, and stuff like that, there's just, like, a fun element to it that I enjoy. So any deck that lets me do that, like, honestly, like, I enjoy Iron Thorns. I know a lot of people hate it, but I'll play a lot of Iron Thorns, actually, just to kind of mess around with it, and have a good time. Yeah, I needed to do that.
Yeah, you're fine.
But yeah, so, like, I'll mess around with Iron Thorns and stuff like that just to see, and just have a good time with it.
Yeah, and like I said before, I have my own weakness for certain aggro archetypes too. I mean, I'm not. Oh, whoa, what's going on here? I'm not like anti-aggro. I just like control style play. I find it gels with my soul, I suppose. Yeah, and what you said about certain types of cards gelling, I mean, I think some of that too. Where am I getting? There we are. I think some of that too is, I've heard this said. I'm not sure if I agree with this statement 100% or not, but I've heard it said that one of the things that makes control so successful is that it catches the opponent off guard. I don't know if I agree with that 100%. I mean, it definitely does, but I don't know if it's like, I don't know if I like support that 110% or not. Because you can see block Snorlax coming, and Snorlax can still get rid of your switches with Airy and still mill you out with Misfortune Sisters or something like that. So yeah, that's just an ongoing debate I've been having in my head, and whenever I see it on different servers and such.
So I think with that argument, yeah, if you don't mind,
I'll go for it.
I think with that argument of like it's more successful because it's unexpected, I would lean in this, like, in the sense that it is, but again, depending on format. So if you're, again, like on the ladder, you expect to see control less, but if you go to like a local tournament, you're probably only going to see like one control player most of the time. I think also because of the stigma that control decks get, most people don't want to take them to a local, even if it's something that they enjoy playing, because they don't want to be that guy who plays control at your local. But I think if you're going to like a regional or a national event, that rule doesn't apply, because you're expecting going into that, like, there's gonna be control players here. They're gonna be playing this deck. They're gonna be looking to take advantage of like a niche in the meta. But outside of that, like, if you just go to your local, I think you would do way better with control, because again, people aren't expecting you to play it. And I think a lot of that is like the social stigma around control that unfortunately just exists, I feel like, in any game ever that has anything control based.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I actually was talking to a Discord server member about how she was asked by her store to not bring control anymore because the players are so frustrated at losing, because she's such a master at Pidgeot control. And like, she was literally asked by the owner, stop playing control because it's too much. I was like, whoa, this is insane. Like, it's a thing, it's real. So yeah,
I personally really don't like that. For context, for anybody watching, before I got into any, like, really getting into like competitive TCGs and stuff like that, I played a lot of Smash Brothers. And
yeah,
don't get me wrong, as a competitive Smash player, getting chain grabbed indefinitely, like in Melee by like Marth and stuff like that, is like really frustrating, right? Like, it's objectively not fun to have happen to you. But at the same time, like, something that was okay, so this was an argument that was made by Hungrybox, and it was an argument that I didn't really believe in when I was younger, And as I got older, I understand it because now I'm an old man and have old man hands. And so one of the things that Hungrybox always argued, right, is like when he's playing Jigglypuff, it's like he can be the best in the world playing that character. He wouldn't be top 10 if he only played Fox because he just doesn't have like the mechanical ability to do it. Right? It's like that doesn't work for him. He can't do the play style. He doesn't have the mechanical ability to play Fox to the level that it needs to be, but that doesn't mean he's not a good player. It just means he has to change the way that he plays. And I think that's something that's very important and like kind of goes under the radar a lot of times, or like goes like unnoted, is the fact that what ends up happening, I feel like, for a lot of players is, all right, this is my shot right here. This determines if I can win the game or not. Okay, not looking great. I only need... Alright, it comes down to this 50-50 on if I can win this game or not. And then a 1 in 6 chance. Okay, there's hope. The dream is alive. Alright, we get this attack. Alright, and now we have a 1 in 6, or what should be a 2 in 6 chance to get the Brute Bonnet. I didn't get it. Alright, I lose. There's no shot. That was my only boss. Alright, I'm gonna FF this one.
Okay.
Because I'm literally out of all possible options on how to win the game. But you gotta play until you know that.
GG's, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We'll definitely we'll do a tiebreaker.
Sure.
But yeah, that's definitely the thing of like, you just have to find that play style for you, and I think it's really unfair a lot of times, like to take your Discord member as an example. It's like to literally tell them, hey, you can't play with us anymore if you're gonna play that way for a style that is like, it's how the game works. Like,
yes.
It is a element of the game, I think, is really kind of toxic and not fair, because it's like, she could make the same argument. It's like, okay, fine, well, nobody's allowed to play Charizard. And it's like, no one's going to sit there and be like, oh, that's reasonable. And it's like, so why is it reasonable that she can't play her deck?
Yeah, no, Professor Gnome, like what you just said there is exactly it. Is for anyone who follows the NFL, should the Kansas City Chiefs feel bad about having Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes? Like they're like perfect at this point in the season as of the posting of this video, and it's like what is going on? Like, I should say the recording of this video. Like, it's not the Chiefs' fault that they're so good. Like, if you're talented at Pidgeot control, why can't you just celebrate it and force your opponent to get better? Like, I don't want to use the get good argumentation, but it's like,
no, I think that's fair. Y'all just got to get good. I mean, that is just what it is. I think also sometimes it's accepting, not to cut you off, I apologize, but one of the things is like, it's part of, like we talked about, like, all right, so like that Cradilly, like what just happened in the Cradilly game is a perfect example, right? Is like, I played the best I could until I had no possible way to win. And then you move on. And you just accept, like, all right, this is just the way it is. Like, it got prize. Like, sometimes things just happen. And you continue to play. It's like, it's not... Sometimes it's a skill issue. Sometimes it's a card game and there's only so many things you can do. But, like, other times it's like, they just beat you. Like, they just played better on the day. And, like, that's okay. It's like, to argue... To use like a sports example to you know, kind of go off the back of you. I don't know football very well, but what I do know is like mixed martial arts and things like that.
Awesome. Yeah.
And so it's the same example. It's like, would you argue that a wrestler shouldn't be allowed to go for a takedown because people find it generically boring? It's like, no, that's how they fight. That is like their specialty. And it's like, just because there are people in the audience that don't find it entertaining doesn't mean that they either shouldn't be allowed to compete or that they just aren't allowed to use their own skills. Oh, Articuno. This one was so fun. I forgot about this deck. Oh, that's so cool. All right, that's exciting. But I have to be very careful now.
What makes you feel better? I don't have the best of hands, but
I also
we'll
don't.
see.
So we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens exactly. Okay. Might okay. Let's do a really quick deck check here. But yeah, I think your MMA example works perfectly just as well. It's the same idea. Exactly. Yeah. Um, it is what it is. All right.
Oh, Dream. Oh, okay. Are you using the stage one as like a draw engine, or do you actually run like all Dracopult?
No. I'm trying I'm using it as an engine. Yeah.
Okay.
Because fun fact for all of you audience members, Dracloak with Recon Directive has the exact same ability as what was known as Pidgeotto Control, which was a hand locking deck. Back when Lieutenant Surge's supporter card was legal, you could play 3 supporter cards, in a single gosh, I'm losing my train of thought. Single turn, and just destroyed your opponent's hand. It was nasty. So yeah.
No, yeah. One of the other thing, it's funny that you used you said the Draco. How do you say it? Dracoloak?
I always called it Dracloak, but it could be something else.
Okay, so that's definitely way better than what I've been saying. I've been saying Dracolock for the longest time because I never, like, all right. So I've talked about this with my audience a lot, but, like, for every new watcher, it happens every video. I'm, like, severely dyslexic, and so the first time I look at something, even if it's incredibly wrong, it's just how I read it forever. And so the first time I ever looked at the Dracloak, I read it as Dracolock, and I've just been saying it for so long, I didn't even know it was wrong until, like, the other day a viewer pointed it out and was like, that's not even remotely close. And I was like, oh no. And I just thought that was so funny.
It's all good, man. It's all good. I mean, you should hear me butcher names all the time. It's perfectly fine.
Yeah, it's all right. This is a pivot from like what our whole conversation has been about thus far, but I think it's like this thing where like when I grew up, I was like watching the anime and like all this kind of stuff. So like you knew what all the Pokemon's names were.
Yeah.
Now that I don't do that anymore just because I'm too busy to watch any show. And so it's like I don't hear what these are called anymore. I just have to like assume I'm reading it right. And I feel like sometimes it's not my fault. Like, some of these names are ridiculous.
I agree with you. I mean, there's like 3 or 4 different ways to pronounce several of them, and it's like, okay, just pick one.
Yeah, right.
And go with it. Yeah.
All right, hopefully I can get... Okay. Not... Okay. Hold on. We may be able to cook here.
Ooh.
Alright, this isn't exactly what I wanted, but it's the way we're gonna have to do this.
All good.
Let's get lucky. We didn't. It's okay though. We're still here. We still have 4 prize cards left to go. Technically 3 after this upcoming attack.
We'll do this.
We can turn this ship around.
Which one do I want?
But yeah,
I'm not gonna overthink
outside of kind of like what we've already talked about and stuff like that, you mentioned at the beginning of this video that like, you know, your background is in like academia and stuff like that. I'd be curious to know, like, I don't know how much, if at all, you've talked about it like on your channel, but what are your kind of your larger things outside of the YouTube realm, if that's something you're, you know, open to disclosing?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Let me just think real quick. I also have a master's in applied psychology. So I do a lot of life coaching and counseling, helping people find what their purpose is in life and get them on the right road. I also do a lot of ministries at my church. I left academia because it's extremely toxic. I'm a truth seeker by nature, and academia is more... I mean, there's politics in pretty much every job, but, like, it really is about who you know and whose bum you can kiss rather than your honest... And I'm going to get crushed now by Cinderace. What it is that you can really do with your mind. And I just like, yeah, that's not for me. I can apply myself elsewhere. So I quit, and it's been one of the best decisions I've ever made. I'm super stress free. I look at people who are still there whom I know, and I'm like, oh, you're grading midterms, and you have to give a passing grade, you will get fired because of internal politics and stuff like that. So, yeah, not not my thing anymore. I still review. I still do peer reviewed articles for journals. I still have my own what would you call it? My own, like I don't call it like a foot in the door or something, but like I still do my own thing thereof. Yeah. And YouTube was just me like saying I got something to say about control, so let's do it. And now, like you, I have a community and it's kicking well. Um. So yeah, that's the gist of it.
No, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
side note on the YouTube thing, I don't know if you're in the same boat as me, but I feel like the channel kind of just became a thing where like I never expected it to. Where it's like I started making these, or I originally created the channel during COVID. And I was like, well, we can't leave, so I guess I'm making this. And then like I came back to it later on. Like I kind of never really thought about the concept of like, oh, I'm gonna make a YouTube channel and kind of see where it goes. And so like it's always just this crazy thing to me to think of like where it's at now. Let me take
Yeah, you never know what's gonna happen. Yeah. Oh, get rid of
um,
my engine.
I plan to, but actually, do I want to? Yeah, I'll do it.
Hmm.
I'm like debating on if this is the right move or not. It can work. But yeah, and that's one of the things. I think the life coaching and stuff like that is huge, by the way. As someone who's also, working on their degree for psychology and getting into, like, clinical counseling and stuff like that. Oh, I did not think I was going to get that much damage. Well, I think that's going to just be game. I don't have anything I can actually do from here, so good job, GG's. I forgot
Used to
that.
you?
I forgot I get hit for weakness.
It's all good.
But yeah, is somebody who's going into clinical counseling and stuff like that. Like that kind of work is so important, and so definitely, good work doing that. It's a role that doesn't get as appreciated as it should. So as somebody within that realm, thank you for doing it.
Same to you, Professor Nem. Same to you, man. We need a lot. The world needs a lot of healing. Needs a lot of help. Oh, we need all the hands we can get.
But overall, that's game number 3. GG's. You'll take home the win of episode 1 of Banter Battles. Thank you so much for doing this, man. It's been great. It's been a lot of fun.
GG's to you, Professor Nem. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be your first guest. Thanks everybody for watching, and yeah, thanks. GG's to you. Thanks for the games.
Yeah, is there I'll have your channel linked in the description and stuff like that, but is there anywhere else that anyone can find you?
No, I'm currently only on YouTube, and the Discord server, which is linked on the YouTube page. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So at least, if anybody wants to join the Discord, guys, all you have to do, go down to his channel. It'll be linked in the description. You can join up in his Discord there, and everything like that. And if you ever have any other like socials or any other thing to plug or anything like that, be sure to let me know. I'll update the description and put a post out so anyone who sees this in the future can also find you there.
Well, it's very sweet and kind of you, President. Thank you so much, and same to you if I can help you in any way.
No, yeah, thank you again. And then I guess I'm just going to say as the general kind of YouTube thing for the algorithm, thanks everybody for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Be sure to go and do the same thing for Control Players Unite. They make incredible content, and they're very, very good at what they do. So if you're even remotely even semi-interested in Control content, go over there. I'm sure you'll be converted. His work is super interesting, and a lot of his decks are, I'll call them very out of the box, but they are fascinating to play and use. So be sure to go check out that content. And yeah, as always, be sure to let me know who else you might want to see in this kind of format and all that kind of stuff down in the comment section below. And yeah, thanks to everybody for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. If Control, do you have anything you want to say before we exit out?
Just say thank you for everybody watching, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
All right, see you guys all in the next video. Peace.
Peace.